Accessing library computer data.
And to make sure history never forgets the name Enterprise.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Penske Podcast. If you haven't tuned in before, this is a podcast where we are going through all 178 episodes of Star Trek Next Generation, giving our thoughts and feelings about each and every one. Right now, we're up to episode 17 of season 3. This one is called Sins of the Father. It was directed by Les Landau. Teleplay credit goes to Ronald D. Moore and W. Reed Moran, one of those two, and the story credit goes to Drew Drahan. It aired back on March 19th, 1990. In this episode, the Enterprise D's Klingon Chief of Security, Lieutenant Worf, challenges the Klingon High Council's accusation that his father was a traitor. We're going to be joined by Sean and Clay to talk about Sins of the Father, so right after this break, we're going to go deep on this Klingon-centric episode, Sins of the Father.
I am Worf, son of Moog. I have come to challenge the lies that have been spoken of my father.
So guys, have any of your fathers been accused of any sort of traitorous activity?
This month?
This month. Have they ever sold out their people to some other sort of weird-looking race that wears shoulder pads and everything?
Clay's father is guilty of having a terrible son.
Ouch.
I think that applies to all of us, judging by the life choices we're making right now, what we're choosing to do with our time. Anyway, guys, thank you for joining me. This is Sean and Clay. Guys, how are you?
I refuse to answer after that.
Everyone's upset. Yeah, we're
here. Someone find me a tchotchke so I can defend my honor.
That's right. A Chipotle. Someone bring me my Chipotle. Well, yeah, if you haven't guessed, we're talking about Sins of the Father, which is episode 17 of season 3. This one it basically kickstarts the way that the Klingons are going to be treated for the rest of Trek lore. So that's kind of an important thing. You guys, Sean, why don't you start us off? What did you think? What are some general baseline thoughts about Sins of the Father?
Well, I liked it, but I was surprised it took so long to do this episode. I mean, we've had episodes where Troy gets attacked by a entity and gives her a kid, and I easily could have done without that one and had this one or anything with the Klingons, or go to the Klingon Homeworld at least once. I'm surprised it took to season 3 to get there.
Yeah, this is actually the first time that the Klingon Homeworld has ever been seen in terms of production for any of the Star Treks. Yeah. So really? Yeah, this is like a big deal. They actually won an Emmy for art design because of the Klingon Council Room.
I was going to say, the Klingon Homeworld in general, I thought looked really good. Yeah. I mean, that matte painting that they show right when they get, like, the exterior matte painting is really nice.
Yeah, some review I was reading made a good point. They're like, even the buildings look like weapons, which I thought was kind of a cool thing. They look like knives sticking up. But yeah, it's interesting. Clay, what's your general thought line?
Well, this was actually a really interesting episode because I learned some information that I wasn't aware of before, which was that, I don't know if you guys realize this, Worf is a Klingon.
Hold on, my jaw just hit the floor.
Yeah, I don't know if you knew that, but he screams it. It's like 2/3 of his dialogue in this episode is him yelling, "I am a Klingon."
The worst part of this episode might be Michael Dorn's "I'm going to be dramatic" voice. When he says it, when he's like, "I am here to defend my honor," and it's like, wow, that's uncalled for.
The thing I did pick up in this episode is there are apparently 3 ways to act if you are playing Klingon. One is saying everything very, very articulately because you have fake teeth in and have to work through them. 2 is just growling and sounding like the Kurgan.
Yep.
And 3 is whatever Michael Dorn's doing.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's like Klingon opera or something. The guy with the fake teeth, I think you're talking about Duras, right?
Basically everyone.
Oh, okay. I've noticed it with him the most, I think.
Is Duras the brother?
Duras is the real traitor, like the son of the real traitor.
Oh, yeah. I noticed it first with the, spoilers, the brother.
Oh, Tony Todd.
Yeah, I love Tony Todd. He shows up in everything. But you could tell that he was working very hard to get through the teeth he had in his mouth.
I understand that too. It's, yeah, I noticed it really with Duras, who's probably the weakest actor out of everyone involved, that had like a major role to play in this episode. And you could also tell he's a fairly bad actor because every time he turned, he would dramatically twirl his cloak. It was like a very noticeable thing to do. But yeah, so a little rough breakdown here is that this episode is basically two parts. You have a part where, in a nice callback to the episode we did, Clay, Matter of Honor, the Starfleet exchange program is back. Only this time, Kern, a commander from the Klingon Empire, is going to spend some time on the Enterprise. Mm-hmm. He spends a little bit of time there. He gets the crew all antsy. Everyone's going to think that the episode's going to go into this, well, now a crisis is going to fall, and Kern is going to show the Enterprise how to live, and the Enterprise crew are going to teach Kern that sometimes you don't need to yell at everybody to get results. And instead, we get the bombshell that Kern is Worf's long-lost brother, and their father, Moog, has been accused of treason on the Homeworld, so Worf has to go back and defend his honor against that. And then it all sort of wraps up in an interesting way, which I'm sure we'll discuss. But I'm going to start off by asking you guys what you think about my biggest problem with this episode.
Hit me. Or us.
I feel this episode was begging to be a two-parter.
Yeah, I can see that.
I feel a ton of shit happens in this episode, so much that sometimes they really just have to jump to scenes. Like when Kern is stabbed by the Klingon assassins, it just immediately cuts to him being safe on the Enterprise, and you're like, what the fuck? What happened? Like, how did he get back? How did they find him? What happened to everything?
Yeah, I noticed actually when I was watching it a second time to refresh. Excuse me. When they actually cut to that scene where the two or three Klingons jump the brother. Yep. That was a really like out of nowhere scene. It was like they were in the middle of writing and they were like, oh wait, we need to have a scene where this guy gets knifed. Yeah, just to get him out of the Shadich role so Picard can move into it. Yeah, it wasn't. It probably could have been a little bit smoother, but I mean, what are you gonna do?
What was even the point of attacking Kern at that point? Like, what did Duras gain from doing that?
Well, actually, that's an interesting question because it brings me to the one thing I was thinking about when I was watching it the second time, which is why is the brother in it at all, except to do the sleight of hand at the beginning of the episode?
Well, I guess you could say that it works out later on because as Picard's talking to him, like he needs to be the one who still has family honor at the end of it.
But it doesn't matter though because at the end of the thing, Worf's family is disgraced anyway.
No, it's just him. That's the trade-off.
Okay, well he's disgraced, but I mean, is it now a known fact that his brother is his brother?
I think so, unless the Klingons are real obtuse. No, I don't know how far they were planning to keep it going, but it does kind of make sense that they need him to be there, as Picard says, with his honor intact, so that he can like rectify the situation a little bit later. Other than that, I think it's really just because I guess you could just like send Worf an email, say your father's under charge of treason, maybe you should come back home.
Right. Like, well, I mean, he doesn't. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Sean.
Well, I mean, I like the brother aspect because it gives Worf something to fight for. It gives him a family. It gives him a reason. Like he hasn't completely cut ties with the Empire because his brother is still one of them. Yeah. And I feel like his brother reaching out to him gives Worf the chance to do the right thing and defend his little brother and their family, you know?
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
It's I was thinking it could just be a two-parter because I could have seen the first episode be a whole bunch more of him on the ship sort of working through what he has to do. And then
they could have definitely played that up more and it made more funny moments for sure.
I mean,
they could have laid into the idea that it seemed like Tony Todd had a boner for Worf the entire time. Before you find out that they're brothers, their interactions are really weird.
It's really weird with everybody.
It's like Tony Todd pushing a pencil off a desk and telling Worf to bend over to pick it up.
It's the same with
I love that scene.
It's the big culture clash where Kern comes in is like yelling at everybody and which I didn't really understand because Riker didn't get to go onto the Klingon ship and just tell everybody to be nice and act human. Like he has to act like a Klingon, so I don't understand why Kern gets away with it.
And his open threat to kill Riker, and he must
Which was
know
played
that
for
that's
laughs.
not going to go over well. He must just be...
Troy laughs at it. She's like, "Oh, you were going to kill Riker." It's played like comedy. That was a very bizarre scene.
I'm sensing that you're kidding, right?
A lot of great reaction shots in this episode, I thought. Riker gives a good one there when Kern said he was going to kill him. Duras, when he's laying in the wharf later on, Kim Peck sort of does a great reaction shot of shuffling around his seat. But I guess we should try to focus this. So let's talk about the first bit earlier, the ship, when Kern is on the ship. Mm-hmm. I like the fact that, he comes on, it sort of disturbs everything. I like the fact that he yells at Wesley Crusher for seemingly no reason.
Yeah, I really like that the two guys he's a dick to are Wesley and Geordi. And it's like, yeah, those guys are terrible.
They're the worst. But
he doesn't need a reason. He just can get off the transporter, march straight to their little cubicle, and just start yelling.
Yeah, I've read all about you in your files, and you are both just the worst.
He absorbed a lot of information. He absorbed a ton of information. But yeah, it's I also thought this episode is quotable. I'm going to give you the greatest Kern quote. I shall try some of your burned, replicated bird meat, which always makes me laugh.
Okay, slight tangent here, but I was curious about this. So is this implying that they use the replicator to replicate raw meat, which they then cook?
No, I think the replicator spits it out cooked, right?
Are you sure?
Why do you think that?
I thought that there was the way that they described what it was. I thought it made it seem like the replicator, they used the replicator to create the meat, which they then cook, because it didn't make sense to me. Like, why wouldn't you just replicate the finished meal?
I think it's more implying that the Klingons eat raw food.
That's what I got from it too,
and that they don't bother cooking.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I got that part, but for some, I can't remember exactly what was said, but it seemed like for some reason the process of cooking the food was actually replicating the raw materials and then putting it together. But I could be completely wrong.
That'd be nice. I suppose that would show like a lot of effort, or it would show like respect on the crew side or something.
They just like a dead animal appears in the replicator, and they just phaser it until it's about medium.
It's the Riker scene where he slowly phases that woman. He just does it to a turkey. Just obliterates it. That would be nice. Yeah, it's that was. I guess that's our first view of the captain's dining room, which I guess is a thing on the ship. It looks startlingly similar to the conference room with a different table, but outside of that, it seems like a good idea. Yeah,
it's funny. Eventually, for the windows in those rooms, they used to have glass in them and then stars on the back. And I think eventually they just pulled out the glass because they thought you don't need glass in a spaceship. It would just be a force field, and there wouldn't be any reflection off of it. So in those scenes, I think you can still see the reflective glass. And eventually they get rid of that, which is much better.
No, I'd imagine it's more of like a production nightmare of having to deal with the lighting and everything to get the reflections out of it. But like, what do you guys have Sean? What's your general thought of the first half of this episode? I think the second half is much more interesting, so I'm going to save that for a little bit. But what do you think about the first on ship stuff?
I enjoyed it. I thought there was a lot more moments for some comedy, but I understand that they had to move forward with the second plot. I agree that they could have done in 2 episodes. Did they do any 2-parters by this time?
No, the Best of Both Worlds is going to be the first one.
Oh, really?
So they might not have known that was an option, or they might not have thought that was... Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
I guess the argument against it would be like, you want a secondary character to have a 2-episode arc. Does that seem like it makes sense at this point in the show?
Yeah, that's true. I don't know. I mean, he's...
Well,
I was just gonna say he's a prominent enough character that I think they could get away with it. I mean, it's a good story. It's a good idea that they're playing with. So I think Worf. I mean, maybe that's just looking back at it and knowing how important a character he is. More than appreciating what he was at the time. I don't know, but I think they could have got away with it.
I feel like they're really throwing Worf at us. Like, Worf has the most backstory at this point by far. Like at the expense of other people, even. Like, Troy's pretty much a zero-sum game. Data had the one episode where we learned he had a brother. Picard really hasn't had any backstory. Riker had his father episode, which is terrible. It feels like they're focusing a lot. This must be like the third or fourth Worf episode at this point where they talk about him.
Okay.
It's just it's an odd, and I understand why, because the story is interesting, but I do feel they probably would have had a hard time pitching this idea that he needs to go to 2 episodes, even though I think it would be a much better story if it was allowed to breathe a little bit.
Yeah. I can't remember. Do they give him anything else to do in his episodes other than lame family stuff? Because he gets a kid and then he's got a wife. It's the only things I can remember from him for most of his like Worf-centric stories are like Worf dealing with being domesticated.
He has a great the Parallels episode, which he's the lead in, which is excellent. It's the one where he's coming back from like a jousting tournament and he keeps going into alternate universes.
Oh,
but they sing Happy Birthday and then they don't, and then they do again.
Yeah. And Picard isn't there the first time, and then he's back there the second time, and Worf loses his goddamn mind.
It's like the most
painting makes him like dizzy. I love Data exploring all kinds of painting. Like I think they started that in that episode.
That's like the most boring alternate universe you could ever hope to be trapped in.
Worf just kills himself because
like,
there's one where he's married to Troy, and then there's one he's not.
Yes. Yep.
Have you seen this thing going around online that there's a theory that we've slipped into an alternate universe because you know the Berenstain Bears?
Yep.
The children's book.
Yeah.
Everyone who knows that book knows it as Berenstain, but it's actually Berenstain, Stain.
Oh, it is?
That's how I've always pronounced it.
Really? Okay.
You pronounced it Berenstain?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
I always pronounced it like
you're one of like... Yeah, you're one of very few then. And so someone was trying to figure out how the majority of the world pronounced it wrong to the point where I think even there's something from like 20 years ago that actually also has it wrong. I don't know. It was an interesting read.
Well, I mean, the Jewish cabal obviously controls the world media, and they forced us to call it the Berenstain Bears, which makes no sense whatsoever.
Did they change the name of it to make it less Jewish and more... I thought it used to be like Stein or something, but now it's spelled something more.
Oh, have they changed it, or was it always the Berenstain Bears?
I think it used to be Berenstain, but I would, for some reason, because I was stupid, pronounce it Berenstain, and then I think they changed the name at some point.
Huh.
Well, I think this is as good a time as any to talk about our new podcast, Sean, the Berenstain Bears, where we'll be going through all the books and all the cartoons, and just really getting down to the meat of the Berenstain Bears.
Stain or Steen is the name of
that
the
is going to be that's going to be the theme of the podcast.
I can get us back into the ship if Geordi does a Reading Rainbow about it.
Oh, there you go. Nice.
Dun, dun, dun.
Actually, another lacking episode for Geordi. This one, unfortunately, he doesn't have a whole lot to do.
Just complain about it.
He starts complaining about Kern bossing him around. And that's pretty much it. But yeah, let's get into the real meat of this episode, which is the Klingon Homeworld. Let's see, what's the best track to go here? Do you agree with me that this is sort of a weird episode for Picard?
He drops what he's doing and he just goes with Worf and takes supposedly hundreds of people on the ship with them,
and goes into a situation where he is under direct threat of being killed. And Riker is okay with just letting him go down there and be the Chadich who Worf claims has to fight people because Worf is going to be unable to fight while this is all going down.
I actually was confused by that a little bit. So that's the deal, is the Chadich is the person who has to do the fighting?
Yes. Yep.
Oh, because I think what confused me was like, why would Picard ever agree to do that? Right. Even if it was like an honor thing, it's like he's right. There are plenty of other people on the ship who should be doing that are not him.
That are much stronger and younger than I am, Mr. Worf.
Why don't the costumes that the crew wears, why aren't they all like stab proof and bulletproof?
You'd imagine, yeah. It's a good question. Maybe they don't use cloaking technology. They don't use Kevlar. That's like the motto of the Federation.
Are they that arrogant that they'll think their way out of everything?
Well, I don't know if it would matter anyway, because those weapons they use on the Klingons use look like they're made for cutting heads off anyway.
Yeah, and they're so bad that Beverly Crusher has the exasperated hand on her head when she's like, what kind of weapon would do this to somebody?
And they show you the weapon in the previous scene. It's just like a knife.
Yes.
It's like a regular knife.
Yeah. No, it's an assassin's knife that you apparently, when you decide you're going to kill someone, you have to have this thing that like showcases what you're about to do, which I feel like is kind of silly.
Yeah, you think like an assassin would kind of want to be under the radar. You wouldn't want to carry, he's got an assassin's knife. He's definitely +2 stealth or whatever.
It's just for wearing. It's just for show. I'm not actually.
That would be like wearing rape pants, and then when a girl sees you coming out, she just knows what you're about to do. I'm not making light of rape, but that's I feel like very good analogy.
It's exactly the same thing. You're demonstrating your bad intentions, quite frankly, in an open way. It's quite absurd, So
yeah, I probably should have had Tana here for that joke.
Would have landed. No, please.
So I'm gonna go.
We're gonna turn our backs on you, Clay, like the Klingons do at the end of this. But the Worf thing here is basically, Sean, we've talked about this on our previous podcast, that it was just the two of us, how Worf is a sort of, he learned how to be a Klingon by reading books, basically. Yeah. And this is the episode that really starts to turn the Klingon Empire on its head, because we're told that they're completely honor-based, and what they've done here is railroaded Worf's family because they figured he wouldn't come back to challenge them. And it's shown to be a duplicitous sort of government agency that will, betray people just to keep the Empire going.
Right. Yeah, in a way, like the movie, the show Defector, it revealed the Romulans to be a complex culture of good guys, bad guys,
right?
Honor in their own way, and really to see it fleshed out and less one-dimensional. And I feel like this is similar with the Klingons. It shows that they have politics, and they're not all about honor at all. They're about other things at times.
Yeah, right.
I wondered why Worf didn't have a more like rejecting response at the end.
See,
because I felt the exact same thing. I was like, wait, so it's all about honor until it comes down to politics? Like, what the hell? And if he's the kind of character that like you're saying, he learned how to be a Klingon from a book, basically. So I'm sure he has this sort of romanticized view of how everything works. To go down there and be in this situation and end up seeing how it actually works. If I was him, I'd be like, you know what? I could do the honorable thing and, take the brunt or whatever, but fuck you guys. I'm out of here.
Quite frankly.
I'm going to get back on my starship. I'm probably going to take my brother with me. He's the only other person in my family left anyway.
Yeah.
No, it's all of this criticism really ties into my thing. If this was a two-parter, you could have fleshed all this out more. I love the scene at the end where they reveal everything, but it is going so quickly through everything that you're just like, your head is spinning because you're like, wait, who? Why? Like Duras? Why is Duras going along? Like, why is Worf accepting this? Really, Worf's just going to bitch smack that guy, and that's going to be the end of it, and he's going to accept this discommendation, and then he's going to yell at Picard. It really just all develops way too quickly. I feel the second half of the episode, in a two-parter, the second episode would have been focused on Worf's conflict about this, and you could have really played in the fact like Picard can't do anything because, Starfleet's also agreeing that, like, if they don't allow this to happen, they're going to, the alliance between the two, Klingon and Federation, is going to fall apart, and he can't let that happen. There's a whole bunch of, like, interesting stories you could go with, and instead it just all falls out at the last 5 minutes.
Quick question. So is Worf's this is sort of tangential. Is Worf's father the one who is in Star Trek 6?
No. Who's also called Worf?
Yeah.
I think it's supposed to be a distant relative, but it's not his father.
So how long do they live, like generally?
Oh, Klingons?
Yeah.
I think same as humans. I've never Vulcans live longer, but yeah.
Yeah, so they're not like immortal or anything.
No,
I wasn't sure.
It also
they're not like Highlanders, Clay.
And also
more things should be like Highlander. So
it's like how the birth rate 300 years ago is much lower. It's really just because all the babies were dying. Klingons are artificially skewed because they kill each other. When they're 20.
Yeah. The other question I had, the massacre, which name is slipping my mind at the moment. Kittimer. Is that also the same massacre in which the Enterprise C gets destroyed?
No, it's a different one.
Man, those Romulans are just fucking everybody's shit up.
The Romulans are really laying into the Klingons, which is surprising. You think we'd have got a couple stories about the Klingons marching to Romulus and like just nuking them or something, to get back?
Yeah.
Doesn't ever happen.
That's what's so, look, it's hard to watch this stuff in a way because we know so much more about political science.
Yep.
And if this was a game of civilization on your computer and you had the humans and Klingons, and the Klingons are always fighting each other and all about honor, and they still carried knives, you just don't think that they would eventually get spaceship technology going and be competitive with. I mean, it's like, really, you guys are that caught. I mean, you're holding yourselves back by constantly showboating to each other.
That's right.
So it's just a big pissing contest with them all the time.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the humans are pretty much moving forward all the time.
Yeah, development, all that stuff. It's no, I totally agree with that. It's weird that they are where they are when they have the sort of mentality that they have.
Yeah.
Here's my question for you. This is what I think is the biggest narrative hole in this show. Why is Duras so gung-ho to get Worf? He's going above and beyond. He's like insulting his father when he knows that the case is already settled. So I don't understand why he's inspiring Worf to like come back at him, especially when he should just let this go under the carpet. Just be like, yeah, whatever. Like we'll deal with this, and I'm going to be free after this.
Yeah,
that's a good question.
I guess if he just was like, fine, prove it, asshole, and just stared at him for a while, it wouldn't be as good TV.
Well, I was thinking it would be better drama, but it wouldn't be good TNG because you need like clear good bad lines. If Duras was actually portrayed as like a sympathetic character who didn't like his father, and like Worf, it wouldn't be so obvious that Worf's like, you are also a traitor, and slapping him. If they had to come to some kind of conclusion and Duras was actually likable, it would be much more interesting.
Right.
So
I like how the nanny. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, I was just going to say. So I'm glad you brought the nanny up because that actually is something else I wanted to talk about. But first of all, if it was kind of supposed to be like a secret that Duras's family or father is the one that gave the codes to the Romulans, when Picard shows up with the nanny, they do their thing and Duras, says something, and then the guy who's running the proceedings in open court says, "You're just trying to cover up your own dishonor."
Yes.
And it's like, shut up, guy.
You had to bring it up. That's another thing of just keeping the plot moving. I mean, because Picard didn't know that, weirdly, until because it's kind of weird to think about Picard's ploy to bring the nurse in is really just sort of a gamble.
Well, it's not only a gamble, it's also like, what court on Earth? Well, I shouldn't say on Earth, but what court in the universe that works on similar rules as they do on the planet Earth would be able to? Would that evidence be anything more than circumstantial? Like, how the hell would she know if he sent the codes out? She wouldn't know that.
Right. Yeah. They were putting a lot of faith in the nurse relationship to her employer.
Yeah. I don't know. Klingons don't seem like they would take care of their nannies better than we would.
And here's a question: the nurse, good actress or bad actress?
Well, I think we should talk about the body shaming involved in this episode because all she has to say to the guy in charge is that he's a fat ass, which is really unfair.
Whatever. She's probably an illegal immigrant anyway. Who cares?
He's always been that way. He's always been been fat. Yeah, and she seems. Yeah, she's.
Christ, John.
Is she? Well, I mean, is she living in the ghetto? Is that the Klingon ghetto that Picard had to go to?
It's well, I mean, it was implied that it was less than ideal living because she's supposed to be dead.
Right.
They should really put locks on the door. You can't. Picard just walks in. He could get shivved or something by the Chadich or whatever.
Not with his impenetrable knife spandex that he wasn't wearing.
He was wearing a cloak of darkness at that point, which I will agree with him. But although I was thinking this, Clay, with the we watched the episode The Hunted, which had the super soldier in it.
Yeah.
And we were commenting in that episode about Star Trek doesn't do fight scenes well. I will give them credit. This was the best fight scene they've ever done, the Picard fight scene.
Yeah, it was pretty solid.
Yeah, wasn't too bad.
Probably because you could put a hood up over him and really hide the stunt double.
Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it just a lot of close shots. You didn't get wide angles of people clumsily like wrestling with each other.
Yeah.
It was directed well. It was shot well.
I always felt that Picard had a very Picard way of fighting. It's not wimpy looking, but he does look like a little chimp bouncing around. And then bam, you're on the floor.
He kind of has a fencer sort of mentality. He like moves very fencery, I guess would be the way to describe it.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah,
he's But yeah, I was pleasantly surprised by that because the show has not done that well, and they did it here well. It's a little. I don't know if I buy that Picard is also an ass kicker. I like it. I'm not sure if it makes as much narrative sense. I
mean, if they had at least one episode where he was coming off the holodeck, having done like a workout, and he was wearing like a karate suit or whatever, then it would be like, all right.
Just like sweating just enough to get the shine.
He should have been doing one of Worf's training programs at the start of this episode.
Fighting the Skeletor guy.
Fighting Skeletor and the other guy with the mask, the beekeeper. So the episode all hinges on this reveal, which we're revealed. It gives you,
and it's like the most telegraphed twist. I was more surprised by the brother twist than I was by the end twist by like a mile.
Yes, I think that makes sense because you sort of know that by the end of the episode that Worf has to somehow fix this. He's not going to be executed.
Right. Yeah.
So we know the fix is coming, but the Tony Todd as the brother is a very odd thing. I also kind of like that. Sorry, go ahead, Sean.
I feel like Tony Todd used the same accent that he did in The Rock.
I don't listen to soft ass shit.
Didn't use apostrophes. I feel like the Klingons aren't allowed to use apostrophe, just like Data isn't allowed.
Yeah, it's not in their program. They speak very, very dramatically. A lot of accusations going on in a pretty bad court thing where you don't really see a lot of evidence. You just see people yelling stuff.
It was mostly people yelling and grumbling. I loved the background grumblers in the courtroom scene because it would be like the main guy would say something loud and sweeping, and then you just hear.
When you're an actor to play, you've done some. You help your friend do some movies and stuff, right? Mm-hmm. When you're told to be a background mumbler, do they give you lines to say, or are you just supposed to go like?
I actually know this. They say rutabaga.
Really?
Yeah, because when you have a bunch of people saying it, it sounds like conversation.
That's interesting.
Who discovered that?
I don't know. Someone's just eating. I think you eat rutabaga, so I think someone might have been eating it or something.
I wouldn't know that, Sean, because I'm always a lead. So.
That's right.
This is like the extras background scene or something.
Yeah. So you'll always be a background mumbler to me.
Thanks.
Rutabagas.
So the end of this episode
is excellent.
Yeah, I think it's great. Actually, I think I do. I really think it's great because it's like you're saying, you're expecting Worf to fix it, and he doesn't really fix it, or he fixes it in a way that isn't. It's not completely fixed. It's still broken for him, and it's not a very neatly tied up ending. It's a solution that benefits some but not everyone, and I really like that because I think they could have easily tried to go the other way where the Duras's family is the one who the twist comes, and then he's the one who gets arrested, blah 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 blah, and then Worf says something like, no, don't shame his family for the sins of his father, or
right?
Something
yeah,
bullshit
right.
Like that.
He does, yeah.
Right.
But I thought the way they handled it was good because you do get that hypocrisy of the Klingon government compared to its
ideals.
Ideals, and I thought that was a really cool way to go.
Yeah, I think this is where Worf starts to sort of go in the direction of becoming a human and Klingon hybrid in a way, and at least in his thinking. Mm-hmm. Because I mean, especially in the later seasons and then in DS9, now when there is a new Klingon problems arising, he starts to have more of like a, oh, God damn it, guys, didn't I just fix this? Like, fucking Klingons, really? Like, he has more of a different approach to it.
Yes, he sort of plays the Klingons a little bit. He's more willing to, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I I was wondering if we all have hindsight here. We know this story continues. Is this ending satisfying if you don't know that it's going to continue?
This story in particular, or just like Star Trek show?
No, just this episode. The story of this episode.
That's a good question, Wes. I haven't thought about that.
I feel it ends a little bit too prematurely. If I was just watching this in real time, I'd be like, really? They're gonna just end it right there?
Yeah.
Because they don't even have the post credit, like, you know how some episodes end with like a very small conversation between characters. This doesn't have that.
Yeah.
Well, the thing that stood out to me is I feel like that brother is dead either way. Like, because he's there. Even though Worf turned his back, or they turned his back on Worf,
Yep.
I feel like there's, judging by the insanity of the Klingons, that brother is going to get, basically what happened to him in that red tunnel is going to happen again. They're going to kill him.
Well, and because he's going against a family apparently so powerful that them being traitors would destroy the Empire. It's not like he's going up against like the butcher on the corner. He's going up against like the Kennedys, basically.
Right. And if it's and this is a culture-wide massacre that everybody knows about, and so if everybody knows that Worf's family is the one who's involved, which he then admits to,
Yep.
and now it is going to be probably common knowledge that this guy is Worf's brother. I don't think the fact that 7 people turned their back on Worf is going to stop anybody from being like, hey, my entire family was on Kittimer. So here's just in case you're wondering, this is an assassin's knife. And
draw it slowly.
Put it right between your ribs.
No, I totally agree. It's weird that Kern would just stay behind. Although they never really mention what discommendation means for people. What this actually implies is happening. We know it's bad for Worf. That's about it. But we don't know if him taking that totally absolves everyone of everything to the point where the other Klingons are going to be like, well, you got what you deserved.
Yeah. All I know is there's a certain reason why they don't let some people out of jail, like,
Right.
the people who have killed famous people, or Charles Manson, or
Right.
because as soon as they get out of jail, someone is going to kill them.
Right.
Some wacko on the other end of the spectrum is going to kill them. So, I mean, on Kronos, I'm assuming that's pretty much everyday life.
Yeah, I'd have to assume that as well. What do you? I really enjoyed the choreography of the turning your back. It's kind of simple, but it's a nice little it's a nice physical way to represent what they're doing.
It's like a Janet Jackson video.
It is. They do the double fist clench and then cross their arms. It's very Vogue. Very, very Vogue.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Well, it looked like they were shooting in the same smoky factory that they shot Rhythm Nation in. So it might be.
Where's all this mist coming from on the Klingon?
I think it's Klingons constantly dropping ass.
They are.
I think they're crop dusting their own court proceedings.
That's why they're always so mad.
That's why, their names.
The whole planet constantly smells like farts.
And why their names is just like Kimpah, oh god, or Bach, or Bach, Pack. Everything's just ugh.
Do you think there's the equivalent of a Klingon anger management council?
I would have to think so.
Like a psychologist that would say, Worf, what is this anger really getting you? It's driving up your blood pressure. Maybe it's not worth it. Maybe you should let it go. Do you think that person exists in the Klingon Empire?
I'd hope so.
He'd be dead.
They'd probably work for like the Peace Corps, the Klingon Peace Corps or something. Like
it would be more on the other end, where it would be like someone like Worf would come in and they would be like, Worf, all of this pent up sorry, hold on a second. Worf, all of this pent up anger is bad for you. Why not go kill someone?
I'd agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, if the culture introduces pain sticks that you hit yourself with, I'm sure they'd be like, tell us about your mom. Tell us why this makes you feel that way, Worf, with the pain stick.
Well, what was the thing in Matter of Honor, Clay? The guy's father, he didn't want to speak to him because he wasn't going to die an honorable death, right? That's kind of along the same lines, yeah.
Yeah.
And Riker's like, you should go talk to your dad. And it was touching. Yeah.
So what would you have done to extend the ending? Like how would you change it?
It really just ties into the two-parter thing. Like, I would have explained what all of this meant for Worf. And so when they walk out at the end, you know exactly what the resolution here is.
Mm-hmm.
Picard kind of explains it a little bit on his walk to the thing with Kern. He's like, you got to tell your kids about this, like what he does today. Everyone needs to remember. We're going to come back. You have your honor, blah, blah, blah. But it doesn't feel like a conclusion to an episode. It's kind of shocking when they just walk out the door and the credits come up.
Right.
It's shocking in a good way. I think it's a good ending. I just need more time dedicated to explaining what him walking out means.
Mm.
Yeah.
I also did think there was some interesting stuff going on where Picard has agreed to be the Chadich, which I
love that word. There were like 7 Klingon words in this episode, and the Chadich is the only one I can remember.
Yeah, I'm not committing to saying that with any sort of emphasis. But he commits to that role, which would then kind of chain him or bind him to following the rules of the customs.
Yeah.
But he is very quickly to be like, whoa, listen, guys, the Federation is not going to let this happen.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting, but at that point, I mean, they're throwing out their honor in favor of politics anyway. So I guess it's warranted for him to do that. But it's interesting all around as far as cultural relations go.
No, it is. It's like, I think Patrick Stewart's excellent in this one. I think Tony Todd is good too. They both do a lot of work that the line isn't necessarily conveying what they do with it, but I like Picard yelling in the Klingon Council. Like he takes this sort of yelly stance because that's what the Klingons like. They like when people yell at them.
Do you think that when they got back on the ship, Worf apologized for saying silence Chadich?
I would hope so. That's also a great running joke. If you want to get your significant other annoyed, whenever they ask you something, just say the Chadich will be silent, and it'll end every argument.
I'm sure that would go over well, like more than once. As
long as you're prepared to do whatever you were asked to do, you can say it with impunity. But it's
pretty sure my wife would see through that. I don't think she needs. I think the context clues. She knows that I'm being a jerk.
You'd go to bed and find that assassin blade laying on your pillow and be like, oh my god, what's happened here? No, I like that ending scene. I like I like Worf yelling at him, the Chadich will be silent. I like Picard breaking the thing of being like, you know what, fuck it, now I'm a Starfleet captain again. I'm no longer the Chadich, and I'm just gonna explain that it's unacceptable.
Mm-hmm.
It's all good. I think Patrick Stewart did a good job. He had a lot to play in this one.
My favorite part of the episode is when Picard's phone goes off in court. When they're in the middle of their proceedings, and all of a sudden, Riker to Picard. It's like, Jesus, hold on a second, Christ.
Yeah, he also had a. Do you remember exactly what he said? I just thought his tone was funny when he right after that moment, he explains to Worf, he's like, Worf, your nurse is alive. I'm gonna go find her, and Worf grabs him. He's like, you can't go. It's dangerous. Picard says something like, hello, I'm the Chadich. And just walks out the door. It was the weirdest. It was like so out of character for Picard. He just said the little hello with like this little lilting tone that was very strange.
Good evening, I'm Anthony Chadich. I'll be your server tonight.
Yes, I'm the Chadich. I'm here to get my bologna sandwich. Yeah, it's I like this episode. I don't think it fits into the I think it's a good place to stop. We're going to wrap it up. So right after this break, we're going to come back and we're going to give our final thoughts about Sins of the Father.
Worf, I would speak with you alone. You should not have brought the challenge. There was no risk to you. What does it matter?
I am Klingon.
Of that I have no question. But your life in the Federation would not be affected by this judgment.
My father
is dead. He died long ago. I knew your father, served with him. This is not how I wanted to remember him. We must let the past be and protect what we have now. If you leave before the magma, no shame will come upon you. Return to your ship. Go back to your life. The challenge will be forgotten.
Why would you ask me to lay aside the honor of my father? My family? Are these the words of the council?
I will not be questioned by you. Leave now, or you too will be condemned as a traitor.
So, you guys, I was saying before I wrapped that up that I think Sins of the Father is a very good episode that is just shy of great. What do you think? Let's get some like baseline opinions about it, I guess.
Go ahead, Sean.
I'll let Clay go first.
Beat you to it.
The Chadich will be silent.
The Chadich will be silent.
I thought it would be maybe like a 4 out of 5 stars. I forget what the system is. I thought it
1 out of 5.
really sets up the long game with Worf's story. And I think it's great in the long scheme of things, but as a single episode, I guess it does end kind of quickly and you feel a little unsatisfied.
Yeah. Clay?
Yeah, I would agree. I would give it a 4. I hadn't really thought about it being unsatisfying until you guys talked about it possibly working as a longer episode. Because as I was watching it, I did feel like that it was missing something, but I couldn't really put my finger on what it was.
Sure.
So, yeah, I could say probably maybe with a longer cut of it or maybe a 2-parter. I don't know how much you could really get. I don't know. What do you do for a whole episode of his brother just dicking around on the Enterprise?
I was saying, I think
I'll tell you this: it would mean a lot more Geordi.
It definitely would. I mean, it would be a lot more. We'd have a lot more food conversation, like beyond caviar and turkey. We'd be like Geordi would show up with like a Pop-Tart, and he'd be like, "This is a Pop-Tart. We eat these." So I mean, you could do easily 40 minutes of just food comedy.
Yeah,
which is
I was gonna say. His label for different kinds of American food, just with these bad cuts.
What is this Big Mac? just yelling at it. But
actually, where I'm from, it's called a Royale with cheese.
There are these hot dogs in the crust of your pizza.
I see no dogs here.
My layout would be halfway through the first episode, Worf gets revealed. He goes to the planet, and the end reveal. Or the end is just basically him going under trial, and the trial is the entire second part of the second episode.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think if you could get away with hiding exactly why he's going back to the planet, I think you could do that. Because like if you get to the end, if they can conceal the idea that the reason he's going to the planet is because he has to stand trial and may possibly be put to death. Yeah. I think that hook is a good cliffhanger to end on.
Right.
I don't know how you would conceal all that. Maybe you could just conceal some of the details. But I think probably that would be interesting. Because I was going to say it's tough to make a whole episode out of that. That's not just a reverse retread of Matter of Honor, the one where he goes where Riker goes to the ship.
Yes, that's Matter of Honor.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. The stakes here are like narratively high. Where the Riker thing was really just like the Enterprise was trying to tell them they had like a flat tire, and the Klingons didn't believe them. So narratively, like the stakes are high, and I think this episode does a really good job of demonstrating, like giving a narrative like heft to what's going on. It just happens too quickly. I think you could really drag it out over 2 episodes, and it would feel pretty satisfactory when it all wraps up. But I'm going to agree. I think it's a 4 out of 5. I don't think it's perfect. I think it's very good. It definitely kickstarts all the Klingon stuff, like Sean was saying, and it's just kind of an interesting. This is like the first. Well, no, that's not true. We're getting into a bunch of yesterday's Enterprise dealt with us, like where the narrative is actually sort of heavy feeling, which is kind of nice,
Yeah. I think,
sorry, go ahead.
It leaves you wanting more, which is always a sign of a good episode. You want to leave your audience kind of like, oh, I wanted to see what was going to happen next, you know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I think it's definitely a must-watch episode just because it's tied into so much with Worf's mythos.
Yes.
But Clay?
Would either of you think this is a top 5 episode at the end of the run?
No.
Probably not.
Top 10?
It's tough to say now because I mean,
we still have a ways to go.
Yeah, as we've gotten to this point, I mean, I think have any of the three of us had more than one 5-star episode?
I have.
All right. Well, you don't count. But,
Even laughing.
I mean, well, yeah, but even you, Wes, how many have you had? Like,
two or three?
two?
Three.
Okay, 3 in the course of 3 seasons.
Yes. So I'll have 7 by the end of it. If you're going on the pace, I have one a season. So that's tough because I mean, you've got so many. So as someone who hasn't watched through the entire series in a couple years. And even then, I only watched like the quote unquote best episodes. This is not an episode I remember. Oh, okay.
I remember the larger concept ones a lot more.
Yeah.
I think this is a great episode for someone who's really into the characters. But if you're going down like a list of definitive TNG episodes, I don't know if this would be like in the top 10. But again, it's as we're going, that might change because it might,
right.
They'll be fresher in my mind. But I was going to say, I feel like this is the best or one of the best non-idea episodes, if that makes sense. So like it's
a low concept.
Yeah, the ones that tend to that stand out to me are always the one where it's like, you can break down the concept in a really interesting idea in like one sentence.
Yep.
Like Yesterday's Enterprise or
Cause and Effect is very memorable, things like that.
And those are the ones I tend to gravitate more to. But this one was a really good, like, just these are the characters. We're getting into some of the meat of what these characters are about, and this is a good one, I think.
Yeah. No, I agree. I'm not going to ask you guys to sort of stick to a number. I think this might be like a top 20 episode. Like it's kind of far down the list. It's probably it's either a low high tier or a very high middling tier. It's one of those type things, which is however you want to look at it. What
does that look like on a spreadsheet exactly?
Let me show you where the bell curve hits for this thing. I'm going to chart it. You guys can follow me on Twitter where you'll see all my graphs and charts and spectrographs.
Where does it fall in the Venn diagram of good episodes, middling episodes, great episodes, and bad episodes?
If anyone's out there, make me a Venn diagram explaining this to Clay, and I will. I'll give you some kind of prize if it wins. But
if anyone else is out there, explain to me how Venn diagrams work.
And also make one of the Berenstain Bears.
Yes, draw one of the Berenstain Bears. Berenstain or Berenstein, whatever you prefer.
Draw Worf as a Berenstain Bear.
I want to close with this thought. I want to get both of your thoughts on this. I like this episode a bit more than I thought I was going to, than I remember it. I have a sort of negative connotation with the Klingon storylines. I don't know why. I don't really enjoy the Klingon stuff. I feel like every Klingon episode is kind of this level. It's like just shy of being really, really, really good. It's like, they're all kind of like, they're all strong. There's nothing particularly wrong with them, but they're not exceptional. And I don't know if that's because the Klingons are boring or because I just don't think Worf is that great of a character. I disagree with that statement. I'm just looking for reasons as to why you think I don't like Klingon storylines that much.
Well, I think this is... I think the thing that stood out to me about it was that the hypocrisy element, and that is by far the most interesting addition they've given to the Klingons thus far.
Yeah. Because
I can see why the Klingon stuff would be boring because it's all kind of the same thing. Every Klingon is the same way. They're all like, when they encounter a human and like, oh, you're a weak human, then I would crush you. If we were on my ship, you'd be dead now. It's like that stuff for every that must be incredibly annoying to be on that planet all the time. And like every time you sit down to dinner, if someone doesn't pass the gach correctly, it's like, if we were not at my mother's house, you would be a dead man.
It's sort of like being the like a nerdy kid born into a jockey family, and it'd be like, it'd be like your brother Kern murdered 3 people by lunch. What did you do? You just sat on your ass reading like poetry or something. It's like, leave me alone, Mom. I imagine it's kind of similar to that.
There's nothing more painful than a Klingon noogie.
I mean, when you're 12 years old as a Klingon, you have recess. Who isn't fighting?
Right.
And
Yeah.
I don't think that you don't get expelled. You get expelled for not fighting.
It's a bizarro universe where the teachers are yelling at the kids who aren't fighting. They're like, well, get out there and fight. Get out there and fight. Stab him. Hit him with your ceremonial assassin blade.
But yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think it's just that it's kind of all the same thing a lot of the time. And I think I've said in a previous episode, I want to say the episode where I can't remember the name of it, the one with the two Klingons and they're trying to get Worf to be all more Klingon and they try to take over the ship.
Yeah, I always want to call it Matter of Honor. It's not Matter of Honor.
It's one of the other ones.
Code of
Honor.
Code of Honor.
It's one of the other titles that sound like a Billy Joel album. But it's like I remember at the time talking about the idea that I wish Worf had more of even like earlier I said in this podcast, a bit of a more outwardly romanticized idea of the Klingon people and the Klingon way of life. So when you get an episode like this, you know, I wish they had leaned into it a little bit more, the idea that he knows he has to go back and it's the right thing to do in his mind, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So when he has to when he sees the hypocrisy of the government and the people, it's that much more crushing to him.
You know, you just reminded me of something that I don't know if I realized, but it kind of ties into this point. It's a little bit strange that Worf is not more excited to have a Klingon on board with him. You know?
Yeah.
He doesn't try to make conversation or like talk to him. You'd think he'd go up to him and be like, you know, talking Klingon shit. Like that would be an example for.
Hey, you like my sash? This is not Starfleet. I'm basically like you. High five.
They used to make me wear my hair up, but I wear it down now because, you know.
Just the way it is.
Right?
Tight
You know what I'm talking
ponies.
about?
Get a tight pony. But it would tie into your thing, Clay. Like that could show the schism of Worf. You know, like if Worf was going up to this guy and being like, "Let's talk about all the things that I read that Klingons like to talk about," and he didn't want to do it. You know, it's kind of an implication that Worf is an outsider at that point.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's you're right. I do find it interesting that he doesn't gravitate towards him more, just because, like you said, he's the only. How many Klingons has he really come in contact with ever? Right. Yeah. You know, so you'd think.
Go ahead, Sean.
I thought maybe his distance was maybe based out of insecurity. He's intimidated by this Klingon, and you know, if Worf was really a Klingon, he'd be on a Klingon ship. And the fact that he's the first one ever to join Starfleet, maybe he was a little ashamed, or like not sure how it's going to go over.
Well,
but he doesn't really voice that, so you wouldn't know.
Well, I actually think that you could have expanded on that more if it was like a two-parter. I think there's a lot more to expand on there. That would have been really interesting. I mean, that is more interesting than doing a rehash of Matter of Honor, you know?
Right. No, I agree.
You're right.
That's
you could have maybe that's the way to fix this episode. The first episode would be the first half of this with more food jokes, but also you would have
first and foremost more food jokes.
But
what is this olive loaf you've cut me? It's like, well, it's a delicatessen specialty. You've got little olives and bologna. I think it's bologna.
What are these fortune cookies? I make my own.
What type of curry?
You could even have Troy, sit down with Worf and be like, I noticed you're a little quiet. I'm sensing that, you're embarrassed.
Yeah.
And then have him go through it and then, make it more interesting than that, of course. But then, make the second part of the episode be a trial of some kind.
No, that's fascinating. I mean, we all seem to be just harping on it's like it feels like there are like 5 or 6 different stories going on in this episode, and all of them deserve to be fleshed out, which is fascinating. Which is, I guess, a good sign. I'd rather have it that way than 5 stories that I don't care anything about whatsoever. Yeah,
I'm leaning that way more. That the more we talk about it too, because I mean, even if you go back to Code of Honor, assuming that's the right name,
the first one with the 2 Klingons.
Yeah.
Okay.
Even there, he's not interacting with Klingons in an official capacity. Like these guys are kind of like renegades.
Right.
So
he at least has dinner with them though in that episode. He hangs out with them. Yeah.
Well, what I was getting to is that I agree with Sean that I think maybe since this is the first time he really does interact with like a Klingon who has authority and who is there on an official capacity and is now his commanding officer, then yeah, I think that probably would generate some insecurities on his part,
Yeah. It's funny you go there, because I was thinking if I was writing it and I wanted to clarify what Worf was doing, I'd say Klingons believe in, like Riker says, they believe in like hierarchy of command, so it's out of place for Worf to talk to a senior officer.
Oh, interesting.
Right.
Okay.
Like, there's a lot of ways you could go with it. But
what? Just one more thing I wanted to say. I find it interesting that this is the second episode that I've watched in this season, I think, that really felt like it should have been a two-parter. The other being Yesterday's Enterprise. I think that probably should have been a longer episode too. And I kind of not for the reasons you might think.
Shocker.
We need more Yar shower scenes.
Anything where she's not talking to Shooter McGavin is an upgrade.
It would have been nice.
But no, it's just like it feels like they're getting to the point where they're having these really good ideas that they are forced to crunch down into a single episode. So it's kind of interesting. When does Best of Both? Is it Best of Both Worlds? Is that is that what it's called?
Yep.
Yeah.
When does that fall? Is it like a?
So it's this season's cliffhanger ending.
Oh, it is. Okay, because I was going to say it feels like they're like bursting at the seams to go to two parts.
Yes. Yeah. No. That's a good point. Yeah, the stories are actually. They could.
I wonder who came up with splitting it up like that. I wonder if that was like Roddenberry saying no, it has to fit into one episode, or if there was any other series at the time that had done the two-parter.
Yeah, I'm curious. I'd imagine.
It must have been.
Yeah.
Well, I think when the Brady Bunch went to Hawaii, that was probably a two-parter.
there's only so much time in the day that you need all the time you can to get to it. No, it's interesting. I don't know. I'll review it I don't know why they chose to make Best of Both Worlds the first one. I mean, it makes sense as it's a season finale and they want to kind of continue it, but I don't know what their reticence was to doing a two-part before that. It's kind of weird.
And we're getting into an interesting time as far as television goes, because not only are we getting close to a two-parter, but it's a two-parter that has continuity before it and has an impact on continuity after it.
Yeah.
Which is something we've talked about a bunch of times on this, is how that was pretty much unheard of.
Yeah, I never realized this before, but if you haven't watched the show like I have, where we just gone through them all, it's very easy to miss that the Pa is the same ship that Riker was on. It's kind of a clever little tie-in to have it be the same ship at the beginning of this episode.
Oh, is it? I completely missed that.
Yeah. Oh, okay, that's the one he served on. So they fixed the flat tire and it's back in service. But anyway, I'm gonna give this. Yeah, go ahead, Sean.
Sorry, I have one quick thought. The one thing I always liked about the Klingons is they really did. The female Klingons were always interesting, because the male Klingons would be like, "Shut up, woman! You can't be, whatever." And the women would be like, "Fuck you," and fight back, and operate behind the scenes and be political. And they were a force to be reckoned with, always.
Yep.
And I thought that was really, because I don't really remember any standout Romulan female characters or any standout.
Well, there's one who shows up a little bit later.
That's
but I guess technically she's only half Romulan.
That's right. It's a half-blood. I think the Romulans are actually, now that you're saying it, Romulans are the most gender neutral, because you do see a lot of female Romulan commanders later on.
Oh, you do? Oh,
and
I forgot.
It's not treated like a big deal.
Was the character...
Right.
I can't remember if this episode already happened. The one where Riker falls in love with the M butterfly kind of person, where he doesn't know what gender they are. Did that already happen?
Oh no, that's much
that's
later.
Coming.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that a Romulan?
Coming.
Is that a Romulan?
They're a whole race made up to be gender neutral.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But you know what? If it was a Romulan, that would have been really interesting. But that's probably asking a lot for a show in 1989.
Yeah, there's only one boundary you can push at a time, right? On TV, you can't go multiple. You can't have your arms out pushing everywhere.
You can have rape pants
with the Bruce Jenner,
but you can't.
Oh God! Yeah, you brought that back up.
It makes it best the censor bureau.
I'm not saying I wear them or have them. They have them,
but I do know where to find them. Anyway, thank you guys for joining me to talk about Sins of the Father. It's been a blast.
I look
thanks,
forward
guys.
to all your comments on the internet.
Guys, if you enjoyed the content today, you're listening on YouTube, a like and a comment, appreciate it. If you're on iTunes, a rating or review is much appreciated. It helps the show get out there. Everyone's been giving great feedback. People chime in on Twitter all the time.
Well, that's about to end.
This is about to end. I've lost half of my gender neutral audience. Don't worry. According to YouTube, only males use YouTube anyway, so they're going to be laughing and laughing. But anyway, thank you. Thanks, guys. And I will be back next time with Allegiance. All right, see ya.